Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to Autogefuhl and welcome to the latest revision of the Mazda 2. Well, the Mazda 2 has been out on the market for quite some time now, and its critics would say that it is a little overdue of revising. Well, Mazda have a lot of other cars they're working on immediately, so this is more of a facelift than a complete rethink. That's going to take a while to come to market. But a lot of people would also say if it isn't broken, it's not worth fixing. And the Mazda 2 has proved to be very popular. So what's worth tightening up? Well, there are a few visual changes going on here, but the real story is the inclusion of the new mild hybrid power platform. So although the engines that are on offer for this car remain the same, the way that power is delivered to the system has changed. We're obviously going to get the chance to give it a drive and find out what difference that's made. But on top of that, we have some technical revisions, some revisions to the way in which the infotainment system works and the technology that's available to you, and a little bit of tweaking in the drive and handling of the car. Now, there's nothing wrong to be said with freshening things up wherever they can be now and then, and in the case of this car, that's just about making it look that little bit more sporty, that little bit more dynamic. The designers tell us that what they wanted to achieve here was lowering the visual sense of gravity. So you can see in this slight redesign of the bumper here how your eye is drawn down towards the lower third. And that's to emphasize the sportiness of the design, but it isn't just the aesthetic. The way that the technology is implemented has also been addressed as well. So there are now more options to be had within the lighting, amongst which you can have a new, improved and enhanced matrix LED. £4.7 or 160 inches in length. There's not a huge amount that's changed here to the aesthetic, but don't let that fool you. There have been some significant changes here, and largely they're down to the effect that everything has on noise reduction. Mazda are claiming a 35% reduction in overall noise in the car. How have they achieved that? Well, part of that's thanks to the brand new wheels, or tyres I should say, that have been designed for the revised edition, but also there's now thicker lining on the roof, and some of these gaps in the door panels have been reduced significantly. Now we come round to the rear. Not a huge amount has changed here, but just a little bit of sharpening up here and there. As you can see, these light clusters are just a little bit more angular in their approach, and the overall finish just looks a little bit more stylish. But overall, I don't really think that there was a lot going wrong with the Mazda 2 in terms of its design. There's a lot to like here already. The changes just refreshen it and just make it that much more stylish and up to date. Let's take a look under the bonnet and see what's changed here. So you are going to be going for one of two engines. The weaker one is 75 horsepower, producing 135 newton meters of torque, and what you're looking at here is a 90 horsepower engine. Both are petrol, and this one produces 148 newton meters of torque. Now, if you want those paired with a 6-speed manual gearbox, you're going to be getting them as mild hybrid. That is a belt-driven system. It does not have a battery, so its main purpose is only designed to improve the efficiency of the vehicle. The reason that's important is that these two available engines are known from the previous Mazda 2, but they were not previously available as mild hybrid. Now, if you want an automatic, you can get this car as an automatic, but it will not be a mild hybrid. Here's the key to the Mazda 2, a nice small discreet affair that's going to fit nicely in your pocket and not take up too much room. As you can see on our model we have keyless entry, so a nice discreet button for locking and unlocking of the door. Good satisfyingly solid sound on that door, which I think is always nice to find, especially on smaller cars, so that's going to make you feel pretty happy about the build quality. And that feeling of being happy with build quality continues once you actually get inside. I really like the mixed use of materials here in the door. That theme has continued right throughout the car, but it really suggests that you're getting a little bit more for your money than you might expect. In particular, I like the use of this really textured fabric. It makes the car feel a little bit more rugged than it otherwise might, and leads us on very nicely to this newly designed seat. Now I'm going to move round the side of Thomas so my shadow isn't falling on it and you can get a good look, whilst I should say putting my hand in the small of Thomas's back so he doesn't end up in the ocean. Now as you have a look around the interior, I think that feeling of quality is continued throughout. Again, there's a lot of nice design happening here, but nothing too dramatic, nothing too much. Well, I think we've come to the time to have a seat in this car and find out exactly what kind of comfort we can expect. All cars are going to be a compromise between cost and quality, and I would far rather that manufacturers put that decision at a level at which the drive is where all of the money is being spent. That said, there are certain things that ideally you wouldn't like to see, and there are just a couple of features in this car. You can see how the shelf is easily movable, and if we go slightly lower down, you can see that the center console actually has a fair amount of flex in. I think may have been possible to bring a bit more rigidity to both of these components without significantly changing the structure or the price. But you know what, it is a cheaper car. There are always going to be compromises, so I'm showing you this not by way of complaint, only because at Autogefuhl we hope to give you as full of a picture of the car as possible, so when you go and see them in the showroom, you aren't in any way caught out by something that's a surprise. So bear that in mind, but I do think it's well worth showing you just a couple of things that aren't necessarily quite as perfect as we might like them. Talking about things that aren't quite as nice as you might like them, we have to mention this infotainment system screen. Now again, please bear in mind this is relevant to the price point of the car. So of course, you can't expect to pay a small amount of money and have the world's best system. It's very difficult to really fairly criticize because integrating any technology into a car is unbelievably expensive and challenging. That said, I am starting to notice on some cars that processors are getting faster and more efficient, and I'm really enjoying that. Still on cheaper models, you tend to find this an awful lot, and that is processors that aren't quite up to the job they're being asked to perform, and displays that just aren't as crisp as you might like them. In making those difficult decisions about where to spend the money, I think Mazda have done a really nice job on spending time and money everywhere that the driver is physically interacting with. Look at the quality of this air outlet. It's really nicely delivered and a pleasure to grab hold of, and most importantly, when you're driving and paying attention to that, you can get the air to go exactly where you need to without spending any time thinking about it. Not only that, it feels nice, but it looks good too. And that sense of quality and design is continued down here in the dash, where you can see this nice discreet stitching that really adds a feeling of quality. And look further down, still fantastic, easy to use analog dials. Brilliant. With this knurling on the outer rim, really easy and pleasurable to grab hold of while you're driving. A really nice quality feeling of the clicking motion around here, and you can just get to what you need to really quickly, efficiently and easy without looking at it, thinking about it, or spending any time on it at all. Coming further back, again, I really like the feeling that money hasn't been wasted on features you just don't want in a cheaper car. And this control system is for the infotainment. It's important because although you can control elements of the infotainment through the driver's steering wheel, you're also going to need something extra to access the menus. And when you're driving, you cannot do that through touch. You have to use these buttons. So I think this jog wheel has the same feeling of quality and usability that we experienced earlier with the heating and cooling. It's really very instinctive, very neat, very easily laid out and easy to access. Slightly further back, no fuss at all, just two regular size cup holders. I know it's a small car, but can you actually fit real-size human people in the back of it? Well, let's find out. Actually, Thomas pointed out, Mazda have done a really good job of designing this car to make access to the rear really easy for rear seat passengers. And that's important, especially if you have elderly people to fit back here. Once you get back here, well, you actually have a fair amount of space for a smaller car. Now, this seat in front is set for Thomas. If you have a look next, you can see the seat that's set for me. So realistically, he has far more room than he needs in the front. I have a very little amount of room because I have short legs. So if you look halfway between the two, you have a realistic idea on space. But as you can see, even allowing for the very backwards position of this front seat, I still have sufficient space to find a comfortable area to sit. As far as headroom goes, well, I don't have the most, but you know what? I actually have enough, and I think I could do a pretty decent length journey back here in a reasonable amount of comfort. Let's take a quick look in the boot to see what's happening there. Well, no big changes here. You're looking at 280 litres of load space. There's a 60-40 split on the rear seats, so if you fold those down, you're going to be looking at 950 litres of room, and I'll just flip one of those so you can see. Nice job here with making this pretty flat in terms of its presentation, so you can fit quite a lot of good stuff back here. Only slight complaint would be, it might have been nice to have had a higher level ledge here that would drop to give us a more even load height. As you can see, that is a pretty spectacular drop down to the lower area there, but at least that does maximize the amount of room that's available, and in small car terms, I think that should be more than enough. Ready to put the Mazda 2 through its paces and find out exactly what has changed in this car. Well, I think the first thing that's well worth mentioning is that a lot of the time with facelifted vehicles, you really don't get a huge amount of change with the design. So you have to forgive Mazda to a certain extent for not blowing the doors off in terms of redesign. But there has been a little bit of sharpening involving the drive taking place.
After 800 meters.
Thank you for your help. And in large part, that includes the following. We now have a crisper, more responsive steering. They've made a few changes there. The dampening is a little bit different. They've changed some key components, and the tires have also been completely redesigned. And that might sound like a small thing, but it does have a massive amount of impact on the drive, both in terms of how it feels, but also, of course, with that all-important fuel efficiency. Now, there are two engines available for this car, and we have the more powerful one. That's the petrol. If you go with the petrol, you can have it in two flavors, either automatic or manual. If you want to go with the mild hybrid, and that's the only new thing happening in the... Thank you, Thomas.
You're welcome.
That's the only new thing happening in the engine department. Then you're going to find that you have a choice between the two, but they are both going to come with a 6-speed manual gearbox. So we have the more powerful of the petrol engines that produces 90 horsepower and up to 148 Newton meters of torque. All around visibility is actually good. The positioning of the B-pillar here is excellent. So I have plenty of good all around glass to get a good sense of everything that's going on. Steering wheel, well, you'd expect it from Mazda. It's nicely put together, and the way that the components work in concert is excellent. Now, onto the drive. Well, for me, the most important things that a small car has to deliver when it comes to the drive are fun, a little bit of sportiness. I should feel really agile and be able to pop in and out as I like, and it should put a smile on my face because, you know, it's a small car. Driving it around small country lanes, as long as they're not particularly fast, is just purely a pleasure. This steering experience is excellent. The gearbox is excellent. The braking is responsive and precise. What's not so good? Well, clearly that's the acceleration. This mild hybrid does not feature a battery. Instead, it uses an assist in order to gain help when it's starting from a start-stop perspective and with the gear changes, and that results in a higher degree of efficiency for the engine. So you're always going to be slightly concerned about the impact that will have on the drive of the car. And I have to tell you, it's very well delivered. At the moment, we're reporting an efficiency of 5.1 litres for every 100 kilometres driven, and that's consistent with our expectation of what we would want from the vehicle. It's not the most efficient system in the world, but the important thing is to consider the impact at price point. Now, obviously, anytime you have an additional layer of technology in a vehicle, that is an additional thing that you might end up needing to pay to fix if it breaks or has an issue. But I think that this is well-known and well-used technology, so you're not actually doing anything that dramatically complicated. The not having the battery present certainly massively reduces that price point and means they can still bring the Mazda 2 to you at a reasonably affordable point whilst delivering extra efficiency. So if you're not familiar with the tech and you're worried about it, or bluntly, you just don't know quite what it means, it's essentially just an extra belt within your engine that is going to produce power on demand for when you need it. So it's best described as a belt-driven system. So, how does the mild hybrid actually add up? I think you actually have to be very impressed with what Mazda have achieved here. The car's drive has only been improved from its predecessor whilst improving the efficiency of the vehicle significantly. So, increase in performance and no decrease in the driving functionality of the car. I'm all about that. I think that's really, really good. So when you put all of those things together, and you look at the design and you can still appreciate the freshness in it and the subtle changes that have all added up to a really great offering, I think at price point, this car offers an awful lot of satisfying bang for your buck. But that's my take. Tell me what you think. If you have any comments or questions, please pop them below. Please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope we'll see you all soon.